A San County Almanac by Aldo Leopold, Chapter 12, December, Section 3, 65290. To band a bird is to hold a ticket in a great lottery. Most of us hold tickets on our own survival, but we buy them from the insurance company, which knows too much to sell us a really sporting chance. It is an exercise in objectivity to hold a ticket on the banded sparrow that falls or on the banded chickadee that may someday re-enter your trap and thus prove that he is still alive. The tyro gets his thrill from banding new birds. He plays a kind of game against himself, striving to break his previous score for total numbers. But to the old-timer, the banding of new birds becomes merely pleasant routine. The real thrill lies in the recapture of some bird banded long ago, some bird whose age, adventures, and previous condition of appetite are perhaps better known to you than to the bird himself. Thus, in our family, the question whether chickadee 65290 would survive for still another winter was, for 5 years, a sporting question of the first magnitude. Beginning a decade ago, we have trapped and banded most of the chickadees on our farm each winter. In early winter, the traps yield mostly unbanded birds. These presumably are mostly the young of the year, which, once banded, can thereafter be dated. As the winter wears on, unbanded birds cease to appear in the trap. We then know that the local population consists largely of marked birds. We can tell from the band numbers how many birds are present and how many of these are survivors from each previous year of banding. 65290 was one of 7 chickadees constituting the class of 1937. When he first entered our trap, he showed no visible evidence of genius. Like his classmates, his valor for steward was greater than his discretion. Like his classmates, he bit my finger while being taken out of the trap. When banded and released, he fluttered up to a limb, pecked his new aluminum anklet in mild annoyance, shook his mussed feathers, cursed gently, and hurried away to catch up with the gang. It is doubtful whether he drew any philosophical deductions from his experience, such as, all is not ants' eggs that glitters, for he was caught again 3 times that same winter. By the second winter, our recaptures showed that the class of 7 had shrunk to 3, and by the third winter to 2. By the 5th winter, 65290 was the sole survivor of his generation. Signs of genius was still lacking, but of his extraordinary capacity for living, there was now historical proof. During his 6th winter, 65290 failed to reappear, and the verdict of missing in action is now confirmed by his absence during 4 subsequent trappings. At that, of 97 chicks banded during the decade, 65290 was the only one contriving to survive for 5 winters. 3 reached 4 years, 7 reached 3 years, 19 reached 2 years, and 67 disappeared after their first winter. Hence, if I were selling insurance to chicks, I could compute the premium with assurance. But this would raise the problem. In what currency would I pay the widows? I suppose in ants' eggs. I know so little about birds that I can only speculate on why 65290 survived his fellows. Was he more clever in dodging his enemies? What enemies? A chickadee is almost too small to have any. That whimsical fellow called evolution, having enlarged the dinosaur until he tripped over his own toes, tried shrinking the chickadee until he was just too big to be snapped up by flycatchers as an insect, and just too little to be pursued by hawks and owls as meat. Then he regarded his handiwork and laughed. Everyone laughs at so small a bundle of large enthusiasms. The sparrowhawk, the screech owl, the shrike, and especially the midget saw-whet owl might find it worthwhile to kill a chickadee, but I've only once found evidence of actual murder. A screech owl pellet contained one of my bands. Perhaps these small bandits have a fellow feeling for midgets. It seems likely that weather is the only killer so devoid of both humor and dimension as to kill a chickadee. I suspect that in the chickadee Sunday school 2 mortal sins are taught. Thou shalt not venture into windy places in winter. Thou shalt not get wet before a blizzard. I learned the second commandment one drizzly winter dusk while watching a band of chicks going to roost in my woods. The drizzle came out of the south, but I could tell it would turn northwest and bitter cold before morning. The chicks went to bed in a dead oak, the bark of which had peeled and warped into curls, cups, and hollows of various sizes, shapes, and exposures. The bird selecting a roost dry against a south drizzle, but vulnerable to a north one, would surely be frozen by morning. The bird selecting a roost dry from all sides would awaken safe. This, I think, is the kind of wisdom that spells survival in chickdom and accounts for 65290 and his like. The chickadee's fear of windy places is easily deduced from his behavior. In winter, he ventures away from woods only on calm days, and the distance varies inversely as the breeze. I know several windswept woodlots that are chickless all winter, but are freely used at all other seasons. They are windswept because cows have browsed out the undergrowth. To the steam-heated banker who mortgages the farmer who needs more cows, who needs more pasture, wind is a minor nuisance, except perhaps at the Flatiron corner. To the chickadee, winter wind is the boundary of the habitable world. If the chickadee had an office, the maxim over his desk would say, "Keep calm." His behavior at the trap discloses the reason. Turn your trap so that he must enter with even a moderate wind at his tail, and all the king's horses cannot drag him to the bait. Turn it the other way, and your score may be good. Wind from behind blows cold and wet under the feathers, which are his portable roof and air conditioner. Nuthatches, juncos, tree sparrows, and woodpeckers likewise fear winds from behind, but they are heating plants and hence their wind tolerance are larger in the order named. Books on nature seldom mention wind. They are written behind stoves. I suspect there is a third commandment in chickdom. Thou shalt investigate every loud noise. When we start chopping in our woods, the chicks at once appear and stay until the felled tree or riven log has exposed new insect eggs or pupa for their delectation. The discharge of a gun will likely summon chicks, but with less satisfactory dividends. What served as their dinner bell before the day of axes, mauls, and guns? Presumably, the crash of falling trees. In December 1940, an ice storm felled an extraordinary number of dead snags and living limbs in our woods. Our chicks scoffed at the trap for a month, being replete with the dividends of the storm. 65290 has long since gone to his reward. I hope that in his new woods, great oaks full of ants' eggs keep falling all day long, with never a wind to ruffle his composure or take the edge off his appetite. And I hope that he will wear my band.